Most people think property starts when you buy. Now in this video, I'm going to show you how beginners actually start an Airbnb business step by step without having to buy. Before we get into it, if you're new here, my name's Caleb, and alongside my business partner Giovanna, we've built an Airbnb business here in the UK. And on this channel, we literally go through everything about building an Airbnb business, what works, what doesn't, so then beginners can also start one. But Airbnb isn't about owning property. It's actually about running a property as a service accommodation and you're operating for cash flow. Now, there's two main ways you can do this. You can either go through the rent-to-rent route or you can go through the management route. And literally, beginners get into Airbnb because it is essentially an easier way to get into property. And once again, it requires none to low upfront cost as compared to actually buying property. And with this business, you generally don't need to wait around for years just trying to save money to get that upfront deposit to buy a house. You can generally start with management where you don't invest anything, or the rent-to-rent model where you need as little as 3 to 5k depending on your location and the property. Now this way you can start earning money without having to wait around for years. Now people would usually choose to start an Airbnb business instead of buying because you avoid mortgages, you avoid hefty deposits, you avoid the liability of maybe the property not working out. And once again, with buying property, you're not always guaranteed that you might even make anything after all the hard work, after all those hefty deposits. Whereas with Airbnb, you just get into it, once again, through the management or rent to rent. Once you're in it, you can literally make anything around £1,000 profit per month. And it's as easy as getting the property, getting professional pictures, listing on Airbnb, booking.com and all the other platforms, and making sure that you're operating it to stay in profit. One main thing that draws people into Airbnb is the cash flow side of things. As with every business, you got the high seasons and the low seasons. Now, of course, during the high seasons, you'll be getting very high cash flow. However, if optimized correctly, even during the low seasons, you can still be generating good cash flow. And that's what keeps people interested in Airbnb. Two models that any beginner can use are rent to rent and management. Now, rent to rent essentially is where you fully rent the property under a company let from the landlord, and you then decide to list it on the OTA platforms such as Airbnb, booking.com, Vrbo, and you stage these properties as a service accommodation so that you can let them out on a nightly basis. Now, the management model is where you partner up with a landlord to manage their unit as a service accommodation, and you just charge a management fee on the income and the bookings that you bring into that landlord. Now, if you're someone that has a bigger risk appetite, you would tend to go for the rent to rent model, and a pro for that would be that you're able to get more income, generate more profit if you do it correctly. Now, the downside would be that if not done correctly, of course, you won't be able to generate as much cash flow. Now, if you're someone who's looking to take on less risk, you would go for the management model. With this model, essentially, there's no risks tied to you because you don't pay for the bills, you don't pay for the rent. All you have to do is make sure that you're bringing bookings in, and that way you're still gonna make profit. Now, in slower seasons, it won't really affect you, but you still do need to make sure that you're able to operate efficiently so that the landlord does not get disappointed and it also doesn't ruin your brand as a service accommodation management company. And if you're looking to start with a rent-to-rent model, your upfront capital could be anywhere from £3,000 to £8,000, once again, depending on the location and depending on the size and what the property has to offer. However, if you're to be starting on the management model, your upfront cost would be as little as £0 because essentially the landlord is supposed to cover all the costs to prepare the property as a service accommodation, and your part would be to just run it and make sure that the income is coming. Now, in order for you to start any of these two models, you're going to have to know how to get properties that are going to perform, how to speak to landlords and get deals across the line, how to stage the units so that guests will want to come to your property, and essentially you're going to need to know all the systems that are required for you to be able to operate your service accommodation business. Now, briefly diving into some of these systems that will be required. These systems include a channel manager, which is used to synchronize calendars of your properties across all the OTAs. And what this basically does is, let's say you've got a listing that you put on Airbnb, you put on booking.com as well. With a channel manager, you'll be able to sync the calendar, meaning that both Airbnb and booking.com will be using one centralized calendar, and this avoids you getting any double bookings. Now, you also need to be able to have a system that you use to share your calendar with your cleaner so that your cleaner will be able to know all the check-ins and check-outs and therefore be able to get the property turned over when the time is right, ready for the next guest. Now, on top of that, what I normally advise my mentees is to set up a dynamic pricing software. Now, this helps you because during low season, you're able to stay on top of the competition by decreasing your prices to make sure that you still get booked and obviously you still make the right sort of income. And during high season, you're going to be able to increase your prices dynamically so that you're able to exploit that summer season, exploit that high season, and get the most out of it. Now, without a dynamic pricing software, you will normally be having to do this manually, and it wouldn't be as effective, because with a dynamic pricing software, it's all done automatically using market data from other properties. Now, if I was to be starting from the beginning, my first step would be to fully understand the model in and out. Because when you're approaching the landlords and when you're selling your services, if you don't understand your model, you won't be able to sell your services. Because at the end of the day, these people will know if you don't know what you're talking about. So make sure that you learn the model in and out. Now, second step, I would head over to Company House and set up a private limited company. Now, once my company is set up, the second step I would take is I would start to actually research the area that I'm looking to get my first unit in. Now, what you want to do is you want to head over to Google Maps. You want to type in any city that you want to start investing in. Let's say if I was to want to be investing in Manchester, I type in Manchester. What I want to do is I want to scout the area. I want to scout the map just to see where would there be the most demand for a service accommodation unit. Now, just to give you guys an idea, when you see yellow bits on the map like this, it means it's a city centre or it's a place that, will have a lot of traffic in terms of people in the area. Now, places like these, they're good because that means there's a lot of traffic, there's a lot of people, 100% people are going to need accommodation because people are going to want to be based in that busy area. Now, second thing I would look for would be for a train station. Now, when you see that there's a train station in the area, that's also a good sign that there will be a demand for short-term accommodation because people always want to be based close to public transports, especially when they don't drive. Now, on top of that as well, if there was ever to be any constructions or any work going on at a train station, people working there on that project will need a short-term accommodation and you would be able to host them. Now, whilst looking at a city, another thing I would also look at would be a university. Now, this is because when you locate yourself close to universities, you will tend to have people that are either coming to, let's say, visit the university, or either coming to study at the university, especially the international student. You will see that there will be a demand for short-term accommodation. Now, another thing I would look for in an area would be a hospital. And this is because you'd get people like the employees working at the hospital, nurses, doctors, that might need short-term accommodation. On top of that, you will get families that are coming to visit, obviously, their family that are patients at that hospital, and they will need a short-term accommodation. Now, just to give you guys a clue as well, I would want to look for a place that already has hotels nearby. This is because hotels have actually done the research and invested millions in that building or in that area because they know that there is demand. So you locating yourself close to a hotel just means that you would be able to get some of that demand because they won't be able to host all the guests. And also on top of that, you provide a service that is better than what the hotels provide because your service accommodation will have a kitchen, will have all the amenities that will make it feel like a home, whereas a hotel could never provide that type of service. Now, guys, these are just some of the things that I would look out for. Obviously, the more of these that you have, the better, because that means that there will be more demand for your service accommodation. Now, once you've done that, I would then head over to Open Rent, Gumtree, Facebook Market, obviously Rightmove, Zoopla as well, and start looking for properties in that area. Now, guys, just to give you a tip there, being in the market for so long, I know for a fact one beds don't really work because when you get a one bed, it's very hard to make it work because you're in competition with the hotels that also offer one beds. There isn't much difference. Now, you might be able to make it work, but once again, me personally, I prefer going for the bigger houses. Normally, I prefer going for 3 beds and above. Here and there, I might take on a 2 bed because when you're starting out, you don't really want to overpay for rent. You want to pay what the market rent is. And obviously, once you hit that search button, you're going to see that there will be a lot of properties that have met your criteria. And now it's time to do some digging. What you're going to do is all of these are direct to landlord deals. You can approach the landlords directly, you can offer them your service. Obviously, the idea is to get them on a phone call, build rapport, and book in a viewing. Then you can further build that rapport and also pitch all your services and sell your services to him. Now, once you've done that and you've secured the property, what you would now want to do is you want to stage it to Airbnb standards. So what I would do is I would go on Pinterest to get some deco ideas, or alternatively, if you have the budget or if the landlord has a budget, then I would get an interior designer who's a specialist to decorate the property. Now, once the property is all decorated to Airbnb standards, then when I get professional photography, this is because your pictures are the first thing that the guests are gonna see when they're browsing on Airbnb or any other platform. So you need to make sure that the pictures that you take stand out. because if they don't stand out or if they got that phone quality, they're gonna skip past your listing and go to the next listing that has professional photography. Once you take a professional photography, the next step would be to set up your channel manager. Now, we personally use Uplisting. There is a lot of other channel managers that are there, and it's up to your preference to choose whichever one you prefer. Now, you also then need to list your property on Airbnb, Booking.com, all these other platforms. And once again, when you're listing on here, use your professional photos. You also want to make sure that the title of the listing stands out. You want to make sure that the description stands out, and you also want to make sure that you've been able to include as many amenities as you can, because the more amenities, the more your property will stand out as compared to your competition. Now guys, after that step, your Airbnb listing will be live and it'll start getting in bookings, as long as you've done all the price stages correctly and you really learn about the model before taking any action. And the goal is never to rush, but it's to actually take your time and make sure that you get that first one correct, because the minute you do the first one right, getting a second, the third, the fourth will be like a walk in the park. And that's when you really start scaling like mad. Guys, if you want to see more video like these, make sure you drop a like, subscribe to the channel, because we'll be dropping a lot more value for free.